Hey, welcome back to another episode of Road Noise. Um, I gave this little spiel usually every time, just kind of giving you a lay of the land. But this time I just want to just welcome you and thank you for joining us as we kind of reflect on the ministry that mom and dad have, been tasked with or commissioned with for the last 50 plus years. But I want to ask you if you're getting anything out of this and if you're enjoying the conversations, please consider rating us on your podcast app. Give us a 5 star. That would be great. Or leaving us a comment if you're either on Spotify over on or over on YouTube. And we'd love to interact with you. I guess also I should say on Facebook too. I don't have a Facebook account, so I always forget about it. But yeah, there too.
Yeah, I think you're the last person that doesn't have Facebook account.
I'm holding
Yeah.
out. I think I keep declining the calls from Mark and Zuckerberg to have me join, but I keep telling them it's not
Yeah.
worth it. So
Well, I think I heard that when the last person finally gets a Facebook account is when the rapture will take place. So
oh,
you're holding us all up.
yeah. In that case, what are we doing here? Let me.
Oh my. Yeah. All right. Well, you ready to head down the road?
Yeah, let's see. Let's see where we headed today, Dad.
Well, I would like to take us back to Alaska when this would have been, yeah, right around the time that you were born, give or take just a couple of months, really. And the story kind of goes back to a guy that we've referred to in other podcasts by the name of Harold Weiss. I tell you, I learned so much from this guy and appreciated him so much. And I know that right now he's rejoicing with the Lord, but I sure miss his phone calls and the time together. But this is something that he shared with me. But before I get into that part of the story, maybe you've heard that a person that is just a really great guy, yeah, like a Harold Weiss, we could refer to him as the salt of the earth.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just a good, solid person, okay? The salt of the earth. But then if you know somebody that's a lazy person, you might say that they're not worth the salt in their bread. And I don't know how much salt there is in bread, but at least from that statement and that saying, I'm kind of get the idea that maybe there's not a whole lot of salt, and that this really lazy person isn't worth the salt in their bread. But that kind of takes us to our subject about salt. And it's a very necessary thing. During the past 2 weeks that we've been on the road doing meetings and so forth in churches, I was able to pick up a book at a museum about my ancestors. And it goes back to my fifth great grandfather. And it talks about him being the first white settler in Virginia. Well, it wasn't just Virginia, it was actually West Virginia, but it was Virginia at that time. And as I was reading through just part of that book so far, I don't remember exactly which chapter it is, but somewhere between chapter 1 and 5, it talks about this man, his family, another family moved in not too far south of them, and then a third family moved in. And so these three families just developed that whole area. And the book says that they were self-sufficient. They were able to live off the land. I mean, they didn't have grocery stores or anything else. So, I mean, they were hunting and fishing and growing things and so forth. But it said that the only thing that they did not have, that they had to go get, and I forget where it was they had to go get, but that one item was salt. Salt is an important thing. And just for the grins, I kind of looked it up, and sodium makes up the human body. And for a person that weighs about 154 pounds, there's about 10 ounces worth of salt in there. And so I'm thinking, okay, 10 ounces of salt, how much is that? Well, if we're talking table salt, that comes out to be approximately 15 tablespoons. And so we have a good bit of salt inside of us. And salt is necessary. It does a lot of really cool things. It helps control fluid balance and how information is transferred through our nerves, our nervous system, and so forth, and connects our muscles and makes them function. So salt is an important thing. Yeah, I know, there's too much salt is not good. And I guess that takes us back to moderation. The Bible talks about moderation in all things. And so, yeah, I get it. Need to kind of limit the salt, make sure we have an adequate intake, but not too much and so forth. Well, anyway, so now let's go back to Harold Weiss. Harold and his wife, Dee Dee, and your mom, Vicki, and I, the four of us, were at a restaurant. And I don't remember if you and Karen had been born yet or not, but it wasn't really very often that the four of us would go out to eat. But this was one of those rare occasions. And when they brought the salad, Harold put salt and pepper on his salad. I had never seen anybody do that. I'd never heard of anybody doing that. And so I'm sitting there and I'm kind of amazed that you put salt and pepper on salad. And so Harold picked up on the fact that must have had a questioning look on my face. And he said, "What, don't you put salt on your salad?" I said, "No, Harold, I've never done that." So he hands me the salt shaker and says, "Here, give it a try." He says, "Salt really brings out the flavor of things." He says, "A salad tastes so much better if you put some salt on it." Well, I tried it. And I can't say that I've ever found Harold to be wrong about anything. And that certainly wasn't going to be the exception. It really does make a salad taste better. Who would have thought? Well, anyway, so now, as I have the opportunity, I will put salt on my salad. Maybe not a whole lot, but just enough to bring out the flavor of all those vegetables. I mean, if you have to eat vegetables, come on, put some salt on it. Cucumber without salt? Oh, come on. Yeah, I can get it down, but I could eat whole cucumber, if I got a salt shaker in one hand and the cucumber in another.
Right.
Well, anyway, so I just thought I would share that. But, if we're talking about salt, what is it that the Bible has to say about salt? And probably the first passage that comes to most of our minds would be in Matthew 5:13, where it says that we are the salt of the earth. And then just a couple verses later, it talks about being the light of the world. Okay, so what does it mean to be salt of the earth? Well, first of all, just like I mentioned with putting it on a salad, it adds flavor. And isn't that what we as Christians ought to be all about? Providing a positive flavor to the people around us. How do we do that? Maybe by volunteering, community centers, working in food bank, supporting those in need, and encouraging friends that along the way, trying to bring peace and joy to difficult situations. Yeah, that's adding flavor. Salt is good for seasoning. Okay, what might that mean? Well, it's kind of like adding the flavor, doing things for other people, spicing up their life, bringing joy and peace and so forth. That's a good seasoning. Salt, especially if you look back at our pioneers, at my fifth great grandfather and so forth, what did they need the salt for? Preservation. They didn't have refrigerators back then and so forth. How do you keep, you got a deer, But how are you going to preserve this thing and so you get through the winter? Well, salt would be used to preserve the food. And as Christians, we ought to be about preserving fairness, justice, preserving moral values in our daily life, preserving strong work ethics in our jobs and so forth. So, as Christians, we have a call to preserve things. I absolutely hate the thought of, you hear people say, yeah, well, that's like dumping salt in the wound. Oh my, does that ever hurt? Get salt in a wound. But the truth of the matter is, salt will kill the bacteria. And there's a passage in the Old Testament where it talks about, I forget who the warrior was, but went in and destroyed everybody in a village and then sprinkled salt all over the ground. Did that to say, okay, this place is done. Nothing's going to grow here. I mean, it kills everything. And if you go online and you look for some home remedies for killing weeds and so forth, I can almost guarantee you it's going to have a high concentration of salt. Yeah, so salt kills things. And if we're to be the salt of the earth, maybe there's some things that need to be dealt with, some things that need to be done away with. And if we're the salt of the earth, we need to be about doing those things. Salt will stimulate thirst. Hey, makes us salty, or makes us thirsty. And so if we are the salt of the earth, can we say that maybe our actions and our attitudes ought to cause other people around us to thirst for what we have? When they see the peace that we have in difficult situations, should that cause them to question us as to why we have this type of peace? Well, we're being the salt. Well, anyway, so that's just some thoughts that I had as I was thinking about Harold this morning. And all that was stimulated when your mom, without me saying one thing, this morning we had some mixed fruit for breakfast. And amongst that mixed fruit was cantaloupe and watermelon. And I didn't say anything at all, but she handed me the salt shaker.
She knew.
She knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my dad saying that somebody ought to come up with a way to grow watermelons in salt water.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that would just simplify that whole process by one step.
Yeah.
But so far, I guess that hasn't happened.
Yeah. What a
But
great
anyway,
reminder.
so yeah, thank you, Harold, and for that lesson and the practical applications that we can find by being the salt of the earth.
Yep. Yep. And I love how scripture's just sprinkled with those kind of metaphors that give us something to kind of reflect on that's in the natural world, but has a spiritual truth behind it.
Yep. Yeah, well, this is kind of a cheap plug, but we're getting into this time of year, and as we've been on the road the past couple weeks doing meetings, we take some books with us, and lo and behold, one of the top selling books that we had on this tour was none other than the 101 plus ways to fix tuna fish.
Oh, yeah. We haven't actually
Yeah,
talked much about that on the podcast in a
no,
bit.
we haven't. And so this is kind of a cheap plug for those of you that are looking for the ideal Christmas gift. I mean, it is our number one seller on Amazon in
Yeah.
the book category is the 101 plus ways to fix tuna fish. And I'm serious. It is our number one seller on Amazon. It's the only thing we have sold on Amazon. And well, anyway, so you can keep us in that rating by ordering a book. You know,
There you go.
yeah. And in that book, I also mentioned the fact that tuna fish live in salt water. Do you know why?
Hmm. Nope.
Pepper makes them sneeze.
Hmm.
Okay, well, hey, go buy the book. It's full of all kinds of good
Yeah.
tidbits like that.
Yeah, it's full of lots of that. That's great. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and you'll, I assume, share a link to that on Facebook, and we'll put a
Yes,
link to it
yes, I
on
haven't.
yeah, on YouTube as well.
Yeah, well, hey, if you've got an Amazon account, you just go there and search for 101 plus ways to fix tuna fish by just kidding. And I'm guessing it'll be at the top of your search list.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. All right.
All
Well, hey.
right.
Well, is this be a good place to put it in park then?
Yeah, thinking about what we're going to be recording today and talking about that and that tuna fish live in salt water, I've been craving some tuna fish casserole all
Mm,
day. And
yep.
I think maybe it's just about that time.
Yep. That's a favorite in our house too. Yep. All right. Well, hey, let's put it in park here. We'll pick it up again next week.
All righty.